Thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with ILTV's Morning Briefing. Former Israeli President Shimon Peres was transferred to intensive care on Wednesday morning in critical but stable condition, after suffering a major stroke on Tuesday. Peres' personal physician says that Peres was responsive overnight, and he even held the hands of family members. Dr. Rafi Walden, who is also Peres' son-in-law, says the former prime minister has been sedated again to keep his condition stable, but that there's no immediate danger to his life. The veteran 93-year-old politician had just undergone placement of a cardiac pacemaker at Tel HaShomer Hospital last week and was discharged in good condition. Peres had complained of chest pains on Tuesday and had difficulty breathing. After hearing of his complaints, Dr. Walden took him to the hospital for tests. It was later learned that Peres suffered from a hemorrhagic stroke, which occurs when a weakened blood vessel ruptures. It's unknown whether there's any connection between the insertion of the pacemaker to ensure a regular heartbeat and the stroke. The United States and Israel have agreed on a record $38 billion package of U.S. military aid, and the two countries will sign the new pact on Wednesday in a ceremony at the State Department. The defense package, known as a Memorandum of Understanding, enshrines defense funding for Washington's closest Middle East ally for the next decade. The deal represents the biggest pledge of U.S. military assistance made to any country, but also involves major concessions granted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Those include Israel's agreement not to seek additional funds from Congress beyond what will be guaranteed annually in the new package, and to phase out a special arrangement that has allowed Israel to spend part of its U.S. aid on its own defense industry instead of on American-made weapons. Nearly 10 months of drawn-out aid negotiations have underscored continuing friction between President Barack Obama and Netanyahu over last year's nuclear deal with Iran, an accord the Israeli leader opposed. Israeli warplanes again struck the Assad regime's artillery batteries in southern Syria late on Tuesday night. The airstrikes were in response to 3 projectiles that fell on the Israeli side of the Golan Heights. The IDF says there were no injuries or damage linked to any of the shells that landed. The errant explosives are part of the civil war on the Syrian side of the Golan border, as a pitched battle has been taking place between rebel groups and Syrian army regulars for control of the heights. Despite a truce that was supposed to be in effect as of Monday night, residents of the Golan reported hearing gunfire and explosions on the Syrian side of the border. The IDF warned that while it holds the Syrian regime responsible for all errant fire, regardless of the source, it would not hesitate to act against any opposition forces in Syria. Until recently, Israeli wines were largely unknown outside of the kosher market, but that's about to change thanks to a cover story in the Bible of wine magazines, Wine Spectator. The magazine's headline, "The Wines of Israel, Surprising Quality from an Emerging Region," shines a spotlight on Israeli wines, and after it conducted in-depth research on the topic, Wine Spectator came to the conclusion that Israeli wines are good. So good, in fact, that vintages from Israel received the highest ratings they had ever received. More than a quarter of the 120 wines sampled received an outstanding score of at least 90 out of 100. Featured topics in the magazine include the history of Israeli winemaking and a guide to wineries in the Jewish state. It's not surprising, really. Wine is central to so many Jewish rituals and is mentioned in the Bible countless times. Now, Israeli wines are becoming recognized for their quality outside the Jewish community, and fancy restaurants are stockpiling some of Israel's best. L'chaim. That's all for now. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.